That's great. So now we know how a fast shutter speed impacts our shot and freezes the subject, and we also know how a slow shutter speed impacts our shot by producing a motion blur in the subject. Now to quickly understand this practically, let's do an exercise for fast shutter speed, and then let's do a basic exercise for slow shutter speed, and then let's follow that up in the upcoming videos with two advanced exercises, both for fast and slow. But let's first start with the basic exercises for these two. I'm using this little toy fan to demonstrate what using a fast shutter speed will do to the shot when the fan is moving and what a slow shutter speed will do. Now, first of all, we'll be doing the fast shutter speed exercise. And you can do this with any object which has some sort of a movement. You can even do it with your hand or the ceiling fan. So let's get started. First of all, for the fast shutter speed shot, I want you to use a fast shutter speed of 1/250, which will freeze this moving fan. That's what we'll be seeing. Now, one thing to be careful is when you do this exercise, make sure you're doing this in a well-lit room, because we will be losing some light because of the fast shutter speed, and that will just compensate for that. Second thing I want you to do is to take your f-stop number as low as you can. You don't have to understand why we're doing this right now, but this is something you'll understand in the aperture section. But you may not always get 3.5 like I've got here. You might get a different minimum f-stop number. So let's say you can get f4.5, you can get f5.6, and why that happens is again something we'll see in aperture. But right now, just take it to the lowest possible f-stop number that you can go to, even if it's not 3.5. Now the third thing, of course, we have to check is where the light meter is pointing so that we can select the correct ISO. So right now you can see it's slightly towards the positive side. So let's try to decrease our ISO a bit, and let's try 1600, but you can see right now it's a bit towards the negative side. So I think using 3200 would be good. Now all I have to do is to just lock the focus on this toy, on the fans, and just rotate it and take a shot to see what we get. So you can see I've locked focus and I'm just going to rotate the blades of this fan, and let's take a shot. And you can see even though I was moving the fan, the fast shutter speed has frozen the movement of the fan and given us a static look. Now let's do the opposite. This time, let's actually reduce the shutter speed and make it slower. And this time I want you to use a shutter speed of 1/10. This time what we are going for is a motion blur. But of course, when you take it down to 1/10, you're letting in a lot of light inside your camera. As you can see here, it's getting very bright. So if you check your light meter right now, it's pointing way towards the positive side. So of course, we can correct that by changing our ISO value and this time reducing it. So let's reduce the ISO value. Let's see what ISO 100 gives us. You can see at ISO 100, the meter is bang on in the center. So this is the correct ISO to use for this shot. Now let's do the same thing again. Let's lock the focus on the toy. And let's just rotate the blades. And then I'm going to take a shot. And this time you can see that the motion blur has generated this very nice looking blur on the fans of this toy. And it has given us a completely different look this time around. That's because we're using a slow shutter speed, and slow shutter speed generates motion blur. So when we use the fast shutter speed, it froze the movement of this fan. And when we use a slow shutter speed, it generated a motion blur, giving you this continuous look of the fan. So for example, if you were to use your hand instead of the toy fan that we used, then you'll get a result which is very similar. For example, at the faster shutter speed, you'll find that your hand is frozen even though you were moving it. And at a slower shutter speed, you'll get a blur or a motion blur on your hand, just like this. That's great. So doing these basic exercises has enabled us to actually see the results or the effects that we were talking about in relation to fast and slow shutter speeds. Now in the videos to follow, we'll be doing two advanced exercises, one using a fast shutter speed and one using a slow shutter speed to get some really cool looking images. So let's see you there.